Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for the third episode of the Passion and Persistence podcast. I'm your host, Elaina Mitchell, joining you from St. Petersburg, Florida. And tonight we have a very special episode talking about religion, spirituality, and mixing it with business. This topic means so much to me because spirituality and God have led me to where I am today in my business world and in my personal life. And this episode's a little bit special because we filmed it on Labor Day when my son Ryan was home from school. So any audio interruptions or skips in the scenes are because my son did interrupt this broadcast multiple times, and he actually makes a little appearance at the end. So without further ado, here's the third episode of the Passion and Persistence podcast. But before we get to that, I want to remind you to please hit subscribe on this podcast for future inspiration, motivation, and business tips and tricks. Here we go, guys.
How you guys doing? My name is Tom Ortega. I am a photographer based in South Texas. That would be Brownsville, Texas, the very tip of the United States. I'm also a graphic designer, and I'm also a praise and worship leader at my church. I play bass. So this topic is going to be awesome. And, I can't wait for everybody to get to know us and, how we mix, spirituality and business.
Beautiful. For me, I'm a business architect who originally moved to Nashville to help start a church targeted towards artists and creatives. But along the way, I knew my calling and my purpose was in the marketplace. And I've had so many failures and so many successes that, in the valleys of obviously, when in those dark moments, your spirit and your will is tested, and it's the crucible of transformation, really. And I love this topic because at the end of the day, we are spiritual beings, and we just happen to be exercising it through the arts, through the marketplace, through whatever exercise we are bringing value to the world. And I think it's really central to the battle of this game of business too. So if you look, the battle, I feel like, is more often on the inside than it is the outside. And so the spiritual side of this game of business is, or the game of art as well, is a really challenging yet rewarding battle. So I'm excited to dive in. Thanks for having us, Elaina.
Absolutely. Thank you both for joining us today. So you mentioned, Mike, something about being spiritual beings. And I recently heard a quote where it says, "We're spiritual beings merely living a human experience." And that really struck a chord with me because for so many years, I felt like an alien in the society, being so spiritual and tapped into things that can't really be proven, but you can feel inside. You know what I mean? So what's your guys' take on that phrase? We are spiritual beings living out a human experience. How has that played in your journey?
That's a good question. Tom, do you have an insight or inspiration you want to start off, or do you?
Sure. So for me, spirituality, I always think of it as like this, God always like shining, every positive nature in him, all the truth, knowledge, everything just, coming down on us and using us as a vessel to get to other people, and help them, understand things that maybe they don't understand. If they're going through a battle, like you were mentioning, if they're going through something, we're there to help them out. And I think without, thinking, that there's another being that's helping us get that knowledge, I think there's no way for us to be positive about anything really without that. So just having hope, in God, in my case, just helps me know that, when you have a healthy spirit, you have a healthy being, and therefore, you can help others go, follow them in their journey and help them go through what they got to go through, as well as myself. When I go through things, I know that there's somebody spiritual there for me, whether it's my parents, my pastors, my mentors, So everybody's like grabbing from each other. I always think of this kind of like as a tree, how the branches grow out. And if you look deeply into that, sometimes the trees with each other, they intertwine, and it's kind of like that same thing, when you have the same spirit, you're vibing off of people. Um, it's just like right now we're in this chat, we haven't met, but I'm already feeling the vibe between us. And, I feel like that's the same way, with spirituality, being filled.
Definitely. I agree 1,000%. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I think, if you think about it, it helps if you embrace that quote that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, then I think it helps us let go of the control of outcome, because ultimately there's so many outcomes we're not in control of. And yet, what do we get upset about? What do we get our emotions into a tizzy about? It's usually some outcome that doesn't turn out the way we want it. And really, if we're spiritual beings, then God, or whatever your lane of how you describe God or the universe, for me, it's God, right? And He cares. This being cares about our character, cares about our journey, and when you are going to encounter resistance, it's read this Henry Ford quote a couple weeks ago that said, remember that the airplane it's the wind against the airplane's wings that causes it to lift. And so as we're going through those trials and those challenges that are, or the obstacles, it's a really a beautiful chance to remake ourselves. So, and our spirit grows stronger when we face those. And when we can dance and embrace with the human side, I feel like our soul is more nourished when we're embracing both. Hey, we're a spirit, but we're also a human. And versus like the Buddhist, a bit of a Buddhist philosophy is like to abstain from emotion and passion. And versus, being fully alive. A bit more of the Christian philosophy is like, man, you're supposed to be fully alive in all dimensions. So I guess that's where I lean, is like, hey, let's be fully alive as a human being and a spiritual being.
Absolutely. So I'm wondering, have you guys ever encountered anybody in your life who's atheist or doesn't believe in spirituality and doesn't really feel that connection that we feel inside?
For sure, I have. Especially, when you're in school, like high school. That's when like the whole battle of like getting like I feel like when you're in high school, you're barely like learning your journey. You're barely starting. And I had a couple of friends back then who, they would tell me like, there's something different about you. I don't know what it is, but there's something different about you. You're always happy all the time. You're always with good attitude. So then, that's a good chance for me to kind of tell them, well, I believe in Christ, this is what it is. And not only that, now as an adult, you always find yourself with other people, especially nowadays with this whole media thing. There's always people putting on social stuff, how they feel about things, the politics, all that stuff. And then you find like, wow, it is, how can we talk to them, but there is hope. And, I'm glad for social media because you can actually go in there and just, share your thoughts. And, maybe you get a couple of hundred people to view it, and maybe you might help one of them. So nowadays, when you come across somebody in the streets, it's kind of easy for you to talk to, let them know what's going on. And now with social media, you can reach, hundreds of people, which is even better. But when you encounter somebody that doesn't know or doesn't have any faith, for me, it's really easy, just to share, a quick testimony. That might help them go through something. That might not help them. They might ignore it, but at least you're sowing a seed.
Exactly. And I think testimony is so important, but I found that the biggest struggle with sharing testimony is proving it, because it's something that we go through personally. I feel like God speaks to everybody so personally in ways that only we're really going to understand. You know what I mean? So when I go through something that's like miraculous to me or has changed my life, and then I try to share that with people that are maybe non-believers or maybe skeptical on the fence, it's so hard to prove it because it's something that's so personal to me or to you or to Mike. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think that's where so many people want to see physical proof and concrete evidence, and that's where you have to rely more on that intuition, that feeling that we have inside, rather than the numbers and figures of it. You know?
So true. So true. Good stuff.
Yeah.
What I forgot what the question was. If you don't, you guys got my minds rolling in different areas.
The question was, have you ever experienced somebody who's atheist or just completely doesn't believe, doesn't have those feelings
Oh
of
yeah.
connection with spirituality?
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny though, I feel like many times they are unconsciously aware of also supernatural or just random coincidences that don't seem to make sense as well. So they sort of feel like there is, like, I have a close friend that he really respects the thought process of God and who he is and all that, but doesn't claims he's an atheist, but it's he hasn't subscribed to any faith by any means, but he really seeks to live out those principles of forgiveness, of a lot of those things, does meditation, does a lot of these things that, would be considered more spiritual practices. And because I think unconsciously he knows there's something there. And so it's I think we just gotta live out with love and invite people to discover spirituality in their own journey is what I've found in my own journey, and work interacting with a lot of people that are a lot of different faiths. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Speaking of that, what are your guys' denominations? Which kind of church were you raised in?
I am a faith Christian believer. So that would be, for me, would be Christian.
Okay.
Um, and it's like the belief in the Trinity. So God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
yeah, I grew up Methodist initially, but I really became a Christian early in college and just consider myself non-denominational. So
Right.
and now I'm definitely still of that thought, but I'm less traditional than I used to be, and see more of the gray areas of the faith journey than I did, say, 10 years ago.
Right. And I
So.
think that might be what scares a lot of people away from faith or religion in general, is all of the rules and different denominations can get confusing. You know what I mean? I grew up Christian, and I believe in the Trinity as well. And the only thing that's ever really held me back in my beginning years of my walk with God is the details of the Bible, the stories and the facts and the names, and you know what I mean? All those details kind of always threw me off for such a long time. And I can imagine there must be other people out there that have had that type of experience. So do you guys know the Bible like back to front? Have you read the full Bible, or what's your experience with that?
Well, as far as for me, I always been taught the Bible since I was a little kid. It's different when you're taught than actually experiencing it. So what I like to do is, sometimes go back to the stories that you would hear as a little kid, because you interpret them different. So I love doing that. I love sometimes, going back, reading them, and actually getting something out of it that's more, that's relates more to me now as an adult than I was a little kid. So that's always awesome for me to do.
Definitely.
Yeah, for me, I did start studying it hardcore, like in college. Like I would read, I think in a given year, I would read 25 or 30 books on spirituality and religion and Christianity. When I first got like fired up on the faith side, and went to seminary, got my master's in Christian leadership. So that's been something I've studied a lot. So yeah, I would say it's wired deep within, and philosophically I look at business now as an entrepreneur as like, what a core part of my purpose is to unleash people's God-given talents and potential, and that's what I get to do through my coaching and my masterminds and all the entrepreneurs I get to lead, whether they're Christian or non-Christian or whatever their philosophical or spiritual beliefs, you know, my calling is to serve people in love and unleash their divine potential. So it infuses me very directly.
Yes. And so that brings me to the point of those God-given talents and those passions that we're all instilled with. What about you, Tom? What would you say is your main God-given talent that has just driven you in your path?
Man, my God-given talent, to be honest, I think I am a creative first at heart. And being a creative is kind of hard because I'm always wanting to do something. In church, you know, I'm a musician, so I play bass, and then we travel, so we actually gig outside of church as well. So that's like my God-given talent at the church. And then in the real world, I guess if you want to call it real, you know, it's being creative as far as my photography, my graphic design business. But as well, I like to help others too. So I think that's also creative in a way. So I'm like all over the place as far as like that creativeness. But I love meeting people too. So that's, you know, I consider that to be creative because not a lot of people know how to talk to people. They don't know how to relate to people. So you got to be creative as well in that area. But yeah, I mean, God-given talent, you know, for me is being a musician, being a creative.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. So, did you guys have anything that has really, I don't want to say thrown you off your path or your walk with God or your career path even, but those valleys that kind of have pushed you to really search deeper and find out why you're going through something, that bigger purpose or that bigger reason? You know what I mean? So what are those deep valleys that you found yourself in at some point in your career, in your personal life, whatever the case may be?
Yeah, I've had a couple. First, I think back in 2013, really 2012, end of 2012, 2013, I was engaged and legally married to a French girl. And and then we ran into immigration snags that really derailed our relationship, and I couldn't get us back on track. And that emotionally created, you know, I remember in January 2013 of just finally making the decision, hey, this relationship is in the gutter, my emotions are in the gutter, my businesses are in the gutter, I have no money coming in the next 4 months, and I'm living in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I'm like, dude, I gotta reboot everything. And you know, we were hot and cold for 6 or 7 months, and I was like, I couldn't get it back on track. And so I had to, you know, pull the plug. And so when I came back to Nashville at that point, you know, my house was rented out. I had, like I said, I had two businesses that were in the gutter at that point and not producing much income and losing money. And so I had to dig those back out and remake myself. And I started going to like Tony Robbins events and just rebuilding my mind and body. So, in my heart, but I had to rebuild myself. And the next year, like by the end of the year, in that hardcore inner refinement of just doubling down on everything, on my emotion, my mindset, my body, the way I related with the opposite sex, everything. Like I ended up making more money that year, ended up rebuilding everything. And then doubling my income and my net worth the next year, and just like kind of going off to the races. And then, so that's the first experience. And then last year I had right before, you know, I was about to get married, I had my cash cow business that was making a lot of money for 5 hours a week. It dissolved. My team lost their trust in my business partner, and I didn't do enough to hold the team together. And I lost, you know, when that business dissolved, I lost, you know, upwards of $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 pretty much immediately as a profit source. And expenses were up, income dropped. And I was like, oh man, this is insane. So I had to really ramp up and replace my income in other ways. And it took me a while, but now I've replaced and exceeded that pretty significantly, and it feels really good. But it was a really painful year. So that's been my journey. I'm curious, Elaina, what about you? What would have been your journeys of transformation and those difficult moments that have created the revamp of who you are and who you're becoming?
Well, like I said, I grew up in church singing in the choir, so I was always very religious. But when my mom got sick with cancer, I really kind of took a look at what it was I was believing in, because I had prayed vigorously. I was a huge believer in miracles, and God had always answered all my prayers before that. And then she passed away, and that was one prayer where I was like, God, if you're going to come through for me on anything, please let it be this. And I had told all my friends were like, get ready, your mom's going to die. Like, they were trying to prepare me. And I was like, no, I'm praying to God about it. God does not let me down. I know there's going to be a miracle. And I even had started writing a book about it, thinking that the ending was going to be about a miracle. So I was set on this miracle happening. And then she passed away, and I turned away from God for a long time, probably 4 years. I was just like, obviously, I'm not praying to anything out there, because why would you let my mom like die from this, you know? So I think that it took me continuously hitting rock bottom over and over again to find God again. He kept tapping on my heart, like, I'm still here, Elaina. You're not in control all the time. And there's so many things where I wanted things to go a certain way. That's like the human nature. We want to be in control. And I would always hit rock bottom. And that was, to me, that was God shaking me, like, you are not in control. Give it up to me. And I remember one day I was really broke, and I was expecting a big check. The check never came, and I lost everything because of it, like my apartment, literally everything, because I was waiting on this money that never showed up. And I just fell to the ground one day, and I said, I give it all to you, God. Whatever it is you're trying to tell me, whatever it is you need from me, whatever it is you created me for, I give my soul and my life to you. And I'm going to stop trying to control everything, because I'm a very controlling person naturally. So that was the turning point where I just said, I'm going to be your vessel, God. Use me however you see fit. And that is when things changed for me.
Wow.
That's great. How long ago was that?
That was 2 years ago now. So I've been back on track, close to God, for 2 years. Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Way to go.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's awesome. To hear that, it's awesome. That's very, very inspirational.
Thank you.
Awesome.
It's been hard. But what about you, Tom?
For me, it's always been like the income part of things. My family's always been considered kind of like a hardworking, and getting straight out of high school, I knew I had to get a job, and it's been kind of hard with, originally I'm not even from here, from the U.S. So like Mike was talking about, immigration and all that stuff, trying to get your permit, trying to get all that stuff, it takes a while. So after that, it was pretty hard, because I knew I had to provide somehow, to help out the family. So finally, everything came in, ready, good to go to work. And, trying to find that job where I would fit in, was always hard. And, it's always because you're good at so many things, you can't just focus on one thing. So, it's always been kind of like the whole struggle of, income. And as far as for me, there was one day where I was like literally in negative numbers. Whenever you see those red numbers, you already know you're like, oh, I got to change something. Something's not working out. So I figured when my account was like negative numbers, that there was something that I wasn't doing right. So, once again, it comes to the whole spirituality thing, where it's awesome to have somebody else, that's spiritually guiding you, and, making sense of everything that's going on. But yeah, it's always finding work that always kind of got me to seek more of God, and asking him like, hey, I need you now more than ever. I don't know what I'm doing. Just take over, send me someone that knows something, or give me a sign, and it's always there. God always provides. It's always there. And now, I feel joyous in a way, because I always find a way now to not fall into the same place. You can say, it's a learning process, but if you always go back to the same place where you started, you're not really learning. So I'm glad that I had those, my spiritual fathers that are helping me, guide me along the way, because they always bring me back, So that's always, a thing that I struggle with, or that I used to struggle with most of the time, was that, falling in line with God's word.
Absolutely. And I think that I love what you said about just being able to ask for what you need. That's something that, again, has totally changed my world, is not being scared to ask God in detail for the things that I need. And I spoke a little bit about, that prayer not working out with my mom, but there was a bigger picture to that, losing her pushed me to work harder, so many other things. But asking for what you need in detail has been literally miraculous, and something that I never even considered doing growing up and praying. I was always used to praying for other people, and I thought it was selfish to pray for myself and to ask for certain things. And it wasn't until I started meeting with Jehovah's Witnesses, actually. They used to come knocking on my door, and I was a single, lonely mom, so I'd be like, oh, come on in, let's chat. So they sat with me once, and they told me, I was telling them all the problems I was going through, and they said, have you ever asked God for what you need in detail? And I'm like, no, what do you mean? I pray for other people. I pray for my family. I pray for the world. I've never really prayed for me. You know what I mean? And they said, we want you to test it out. Ask God for something in detail, and he will give it to you. And I tested it out. I asked God for a car. And literally 4 days later, I was gifted a car. As crazy as that sounds. And that's when I realized, wow, I can literally turn to God if you have good intentions and you really need it for a bigger purpose. You know what I mean? I truly do believe that God will bless you with the things you need.
Yeah, so true. And the only thing that frustrates me is it seems like he comes through at the very, very last minute all too often. I'm like, come on, make it easy on me for once.
Absolutely. Again, that's the control part of our human nature. We are human, even though we are spiritual beings. We have all these human traits that kind of conflict with that spirituality that we have going on as well. So we all want to control it. We all want it when we want it, and it doesn't always work like that. I was on a live the other day talking a little bit about, if everything went the way we wanted it to go, what would we really learn from that, And God's purpose and our purpose is to learn and grow and get to the next level, whether it be for ourselves, our generation, our family tree, you know what I mean? To continue progressing. And you have to have the weights of the world pushing against you. That goes back to what you said, Mike, about the resistance. It builds muscle. It makes you stronger in so many different ways when things don't go the way that you need them or want them to go. And it also makes you creative to problem solve and figure it out. And it's just sharpening your mind and your abilities in so many ways.
Yeah, and I always feel like it comes back to having faith.
Yes.
One, is having faith in who you believe in. And two is having faith in what you know and where you're going to be down the line. For me, when we started, actually, I was kind of reminiscing this yesterday. When me and my wife, we decided to get married, I was like, I don't know how we're going to do it. Like, are we going to live with your parents, my parents? Like, are we going to apply to get a house? You're lacking a little bit of faith there, but with her, being strong in faith as well, it kind of gave me a boost to believe, and have faith that everything was going to be okay. And, now it's just incredible.
I do believe that everything happens for a reason and people cross paths for a reason. So I'm super thankful to have you guys here today to talk a little bit about your journey and your path and mixing spirituality and religion with business. Are there any takeaway points that you guys would like to tell people that may be listening, maybe something for them to think about or to search deeper for their spiritual walk or journey?
Yeah, I would say, man, open yourselves up. Like this world is a beautiful world and this experience of life and business and arts, I think the journey between an artist and an entrepreneur is pretty similar. I think, and Stephen Pressfield in his book War of Art really hits on a similar inner battle, and it's a larger quest of self-actualization that we really go through, and it's part of the hero's journey, if you're familiar with that, from Joseph Campbell's work. And I think we have to be willing to lose ourselves in the sense of embarrassment, in the sense of fear, in the sense of just going all in with our one and only life. And we're not measuring our success by our outward results necessarily, at least not in the short run, because it's really about the size of the challenges, the size of the opportunities we take on, and how big do we grow as a man or a woman in the sense of our vision and our desire to impact. So I feel like, man, go all in with your life. You've got one life to live. Fail forward fast. You can survive pretty much any failure. Have fun with it. Do good while you're doing it. And just like, I remember a story. One of my favorite stories that I read, I think when I was 19, was this guy, he was working for IBM. He was an exec at IBM. And he made $1 million mistake in the 1960s. So a lot of money back then, right? And he comes to Mr. Watson, Tom Watson Sr., and says, Mr. Watson, here's my resignation. I know I'm fired. I know my time is up, and I'm so sorry about the mistake. I know it's cost us a lot of money. And then Mr. Watson looks up from his desk and says, son, I just paid $1 million for your education. Get back out there. And it's just the reality of our life and our journey is like, man, let's, this process and journey is not a final destination. So if you look, I think most people make the mistakes of playing small. And I love that Nelson Mandela quote where he quoted Marianne Williamson. You guys know that quote, our deepest fear? It's not that we're inadequate. I'll read it to you. It's like my life quote. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. It is that we are powerful beyond measure. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, talented, gorgeous, and fabulous? Well, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your plan small doesn't serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that others won't feel insecure around you. In fact, as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously liberate others to do the same. Wow. So Nelson Mandela was sharing that right after he left prison for 30 years. That was in his presidential inauguration message. He was quoting Marianne Williamson. And man, we're called to let our light shine and to help others free themselves from shining. Not free themselves from shining, free themselves to shine fully. So let's step up. If we play small, someone else will not experience the benefit of us shining our light on them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. Actually, I was looking through my Bible app, and on Ephesians 2:10 actually, it says, "For we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them." And that's pretty deep, because I feel like sometimes when you wanna start a business, you already know in your mind, what if it fails? Like, you start asking all these questions. What if we don't make it? What if this and that? And I think what some people don't understand, and what I didn't understand in the beginning, is that you are gonna fail. You are gonna go through things, but always have, like Mike was saying, have fun with it. Have an attitude that, okay, if I fail, I'm just gonna get back up again and keep going. And I think that's pretty much what the whole spirituality thing is always searching, always asking questions, always trying to be better. So I think if there's any take in this would be, like Mike said, just have fun with it, just run with it, just have fun. I think that's the most, as a business owner, I think that's the most things that you can do is have fun, create things that are gonna be always, getting you that drive to keep going and going and going.
Absolutely. We are here to learn, and life seems like a long span of time, but it's literally like that in the grand scheme of things. And you have to read between the lines and see those gray areas and see the meaning behind what's happening. So it's a beautiful thing when you really think about it. And I encourage anybody listening or watching to really dig deeper and figure out why it is you're going through the things you're going through and what it's going to teach you in the long run. If you're scared to start a business or a journey that you want to embark upon, that you feel you're a calling for, just remember that fear is just a fake idea of failure. And when you have God on your side and you realize you're here to learn, there is no failing. There's just learning. So I'll leave you guys with that. I want to thank you both so much for joining me today. You guys have provided so much inspiration and knowledge for people that are going to tune in the future. And thank you so much for everything.
Our pleasure. Really enjoyed it. It was a ton of fun. Great being on here. Great to meet you, Tom and Elaina. And great to dive in on one of the core, most central topics of this game of life.
Definitely.
For sure. It's nice to meet you all. I love you guys. You guys are awesome. You guys are fun. We hope to connect.
Yes. The signal kind of went out there, but yeah, thank you guys again for tuning in. Thank you everybody who's listening and watching to this episode of Passion and Persistence. I'm your host, Elaina Mitchell. We have Tom Ortega and Mike Zeller here, and we are signing off. Bye, guys.
Bye. Who's this guy here?
This is Ryan.
Hey, Ryan.
Ryan, what's happening, brother?
I like your shirt.
The future. That's what it says. The kids are our future.
That's right.
That is awesome. I love that.
He's the one that screamed in the background when you were talking, Tom. So I'm sorry. Or no, Mike, that was you talking when he screamed.
What got him excited? What got you excited there?
He was playing a game and maybe he died or something in the game. I don't know.
Oh, that would be frustrating too. I get that. I would too. Well, your mom's working hard and doing a great job with her podcast and her business. You know that?
Do you know that? He doesn't get it yet. He will one day.
Yeah, exactly.
He's gonna look back at all your works and he's gonna be like, yeah, I gotta overpass my mom. I gotta do something.
Yes, that's the plan. That's the mission here. So,
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so much again.
All right.
Hey, cross-eyed. Can you cross-eyed? No. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Third day.
Bye.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the third episode of Passion and Persistence. Thank you also for bearing with us as we learn and grow through this podcast experience, and even through the technical difficulties, audio difficulties, sometimes video difficulties, sometimes connection difficulties. This is my first attempt at a podcast, and so I'm learning and growing through the experience, just as I'm trying to help others that are listening and watching learn and grow through their life experience, through their career experience, through their personal and spiritual experiences. So I just thank you guys so much for tuning in, for bearing with us through the growth, and for being a part of this Passion and Persistence podcast. If you haven't already done so, I encourage you to subscribe to this podcast for future inspiration, motivation, and business tips and tricks. And with that, I'm signing off. Bye, guys.